Beast Punisher appeared in Punisher King of Killers, where Frank Castle went through one of the biggest changes in his entire history. After spending years rejecting supernatural forces, Frank accepted an offer from the Hand that he simply couldn't refuse. The ancient ninja cult used dark magic to bring his wife Maria back to life, but there was a catch. Frank had to become the Hand's High Slayer and serve their demonic god, the Beast. The organization had secretly been watching Frank since he was a child, believing he was destined to become the ultimate killer and the perfect champion for their master. After accepting the Beast's power, Frank became far more than just a skilled vigilante. He gained incredible strength and durability, allowing him to fight enemies that were completely beyond the human level. His usual guns were replaced by enchanted katanas that burned with hellfire, and he could even levitate, travel through shadows, and see every violent act a person had ever committed simply by looking at them. As the Beast's influence grew stronger, Frank became less concerned with justice and more focused on carrying out brutal executions. He led the Hand into a worldwide war, wiping out entire armies and forcing heroes like Daredevil, Captain America, Wolverine, Doctor Strange, and even Ares, the God of War, to step in and stop him. Frank believed everything he was doing was worth it, because it meant having Maria back, but that illusion eventually fell apart. Once she learned about the countless people who had died in her name, she was horrified by what Frank had become, and completely rejected him. During the final battle, Maria herself shot Frank with an enchanted weapon, helping free him from the Beast's control, and Frank destroyed the Beast's remaining influence, gave up the Punisher identity, and disappeared into Weird World, choosing to spend his life protecting orphaned children, instead of returning to the endless cycle of violence that had defined him for so many years. This version of Wade Wilson was introduced in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe back in 2012. In this universe, Earth 12101, Wade undergoes the usual horrors: cancer, the Weapon X experiment, and constant psychological torment. But everything changes when he's captured by Psycho Man, who attempts to brainwash him into becoming a more obedient assassin by tampering with his mind and suppressing his inner voices. And instead of breaking him down, this accidentally awakens a new level of self-awareness and clarity in Deadpool. For the first time, Wade sees through everything: the lies, the cliches, and the endless suffering of being a comic book character. And that realization drives him insane. He no longer sees the Marvel Universe as a world of heroes and villains, but as a cruel, repetitive machine, one that forces people like him to suffer for the entertainment of an unseen audience. And this is when Wade Wilson becomes Dreadpool. He goes on a systematic massacre of the entire Marvel Universe, and not even cosmic beings are safe. He kills the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Hulk, Thor, The Watcher, and he doesn't stop there. He breaks into other realities, slaughters alternate versions of heroes, and eventually turns his sights on the writers and readers of the comic itself. Dreadpool becomes a meta-level threat, believing that the only way to find peace is to erase all of fiction. He still jokes, still smirks, but now those quips come with a dead stare and a blade to the throat. Where Wade Wilson clings to humor and chaos to survive his trauma, Dreadpool embraces the darkness, and in later stories like Deadpool Kills Deadpool, Dreadpool becomes the leader of a deadly army of evil Deadpools from across the multiverse, all bent on annihilation, and it takes the combined effort of heroic Deadpool variants to finally stop him, barely. Spider-Man is one of the creepiest versions of Spider-Man in the entire Marvel multiverse. On Earth 11580, Peter Parker didn't get his powers from a single radioactive spider bite, but he accidentally fell into a container filled with thousands of radioactive spiders at Horizon Labs. The swarm completely devoured him, but as they consumed his body, they also absorbed his memories, personality, and consciousness. The spiders then gathered inside Peter's old Spider-Man suit, creating the illusion that Peter was still alive. From the outside, he looked and sounded just like Spider-Man, but underneath the costume was nothing but thousands of living spiders moving together as one. At first, Spider-Man still believed he was Peter Parker and tried to be a hero, but as time went on, the instincts of the spider colony slowly took over. The hive developed an uncontrollable hunger for human flesh, and Peter's sense of right and wrong gradually disappeared. Unlike the original Spider-Man, Spider-Man had no problem killing his enemies in brutal ways. During one fight, he burst apart into thousands of spiders that crawled inside Jack-o'-lantern's helmet and killed him from the inside. Later, he even sided with Spider-Norman and was willing to sacrifice entire worlds if it meant achieving his goals or feeding the hive. He originally fought alongside the Spider Army against the Inheritors, but his true nature became more obvious as the story went on. Eventually, he joined forces with Spider-Norman and acted as one of his deadliest agents. He later returned during the end of Spider-Verse storyline, continuing to fight across the multiverse alongside Norman Osborn. Even among Marvel's countless twisted Spider-Man variants, Spider-Man remains one of the most disturbing because there isn't actually a person inside the suit anymore, just a colony of spiders that believes it's Peter Parker. Angrer, also known as the Breaker of Souls, is an evil version of the Thing and appeared during Marvel's Fear Itself event. Everything began when Cole, the Serpent, and the Asgardian god of fear sent 7 enchanted hammers crashing down to Earth. Each hammer searched for a powerful host to corrupt. One of them landed on Yancey Street, where Ben Grimm went to investigate. The moment he touched it, the hammer possessed him with the spirit of Angrer, transforming the Thing into a monstrous warrior covered in glowing runes, jagged spikes, and dark Asgardian armor, while placing him completely under the Serpent's control. The possession twisted everything Ben normally stood for. Deep down, Ben had always struggled with his rock appearance and the life he lost after becoming the Thing, and the hammer used the emotions to strengthen its hold over him. Instead of the kind-hearted hero who constantly held back to protect others, Angrer became a mindless force of destruction, with no concern for innocent lives. Armed with an enormous enchanted warhammer, he tore through New York City, smashing buildings, defeating powerful heroes like the Red Hulk, and attacking both the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. His rampage eventually led to a massive battle where Thor had to face both Angrer and the Hulk's possessed form, Null, at the same time. Realizing there was no way to free Ben in the middle of the fight, Thor made the decision to stop him by driving Mjolnir straight through his chest with a powerful lightning strike. Ben died on the battlefield, leaving Thor devastated over having to kill one of Earth's greatest heroes. Thankfully, the story didn't end there. After the Serpent was defeated, Franklin Richards used his reality warping powers to remove the dark magic, restore Ben Grimm to life, and bring back the heroic Thing everyone knew. Strife is an X-Men villain, and his story begins with Cable. So when Cable was born as Nathan Summers, Apocalypse infected him with the deadly techno-organic virus. To save his life, Nathan was sent thousands of years into the future, where a group called the Ascani secretly created a clone in case the original baby didn't survive. But Nathan lived, leaving the clone behind. Apocalypse later attacked the facility and kidnapped the clone, believing he had captured the real Nathan. He raised the child himself, naming him Strife and preparing him to one day become the perfect vessel for his own consciousness. Strife grew up in a brutal environment where Strange was valued above everything else. The only purpose Apocalypse saw in him was a future body to possess. But when the time finally came, the transfer failed after Apocalypse discovered Strife was only a clone. Feeling completely worthless and discarded, Strife's entire world fell apart. He became obsessed with Cable, believing the original Nathan had stolen the life that should have been his. He also blamed Cyclops and Jean Grey for abandoning him, convincing himself they had chosen Cable over their other son. That hatred eventually consumed him, turning him into one of the X-Men's most ruthless enemies. Like Cable, Strife possesses incredibly powerful telepathy and telekinesis. The difference is that Cable has to constantly use most of his powers to keep the techno-organic virus under control, while Strife can unleash his full mutant potential without any limitations. That makes him even more dangerous in battle, especially when combined with his advanced armor and military training. His most famous attack came during Executioner's Song, where he disguised himself as Cable and shot Professor Xavier, making everyone believe Cable had betrayed the X-Men. He later kidnapped Cyclops and Jean Grey, forcing them to suffer for what he believed they had done to him. Before his defeat, Strife also unleashed the deadly legacy virus, a plague that killed countless mutants and remained one of the biggest tragedies in X-Men history. This dark version of Captain Marvel appeared during the last Avengers storyline, where Carol Danvers was forced into becoming the world's most wanted hero. The mastermind behind it all was Vox Supreme, a fusion of the Kree Supreme Intelligence and the assassin Vox. He implemented bombs inside innocent Kree refugee children and gave Carol an impossible choice: murder 5 Avengers within 24 hours or watch the kids die. To make sure she obeyed, he forced her to wear a black suit that tracked her every move. With no other way to save the hostages, Carol accepted the mission and began hunting down her closest friends, while the rest of the world believed she had finally turned evil. The suit obviously completely changed her appearance, replacing her usual colors with a jet black design covered in glowing red symbols and giving her an intimidating, almost demonic look. Carol didn't hold back during the fights either, unleashing her full cosmic power against heroes like Thor, Iron Man, and She-Hulk. Even though the battles looked completely real, she was secretly following a much bigger plan. Instead of killing the Avengers, she hid them inside Singularity, a living pocket alternate dimension and used fake body parts and advanced technology to convince Vox Supreme that she had completed every mission. Once Iron Man managed to disable the bombs inside the Kree kids, Carol no longer had to play along. She turned the tables on Vox Supreme by taking control of the machine he built to steal the Avengers' powers. Rather than letting him use it, Carol absorbed the abilities of heroes like Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, and She-Hulk into herself, transforming into an incredibly powerful cosmic warrior. With the combined strength of Earth's mightiest heroes, she destroyed Vox Supreme's fortress and defeated his army, bringing the nightmare to an end. So, despite her dark appearance throughout the story, Carol never actually became evil and had been risking her own reputation the entire time to save innocent lives. Shadow Knight is Randall Spector, the younger brother of Mark Spector, better known as Moon Knight. Growing up, Randall always admired Mark, but secretly envied him, because his older brother seemed better at everything. As they got older, Randall followed Mark into military and mercenary work, hoping to prove himself. But during a mission, Randall betrayed his team for money and killed Mark's girlfriend after she uncovered his betrayal. Obviously, Mark confronted him and left him badly wounded in an explosion. Randall survived, but the injury and brain damage pushed him even further into madness. After escaping a psychiatric hospital, Randall resurfaced as a brutal serial killer known as the Hatchet Man, targeting nurses with an axe before seemingly dying in a fight with Mark. Years later, it was revealed that Randall had survived and traveled to Egypt, where he witnessed Mark's resurrection by Khonshu. Convinced that Mark didn't deserve to be the gods' champion, Randall became obsessed with taking that role for himself. He combined ancient Egyptian magic with advanced aim technology to create a powerful suit of armor and officially took the name Shadow Knight. With his new abilities, he declared war on his own brother and tried to prove he was the true avatar of Khonshu. Shadow Knight became one of Moon Knight's most personal enemies because he knew exactly how to hurt Mark. He didn't just attack him in battle, he targeted the people closest to him. One of his cruelest acts was permanently crapping Mark's longtime friend and pilot, Frenchie, by amputing his legs. Randall was killed and brought back multiple times over the years, but his story finally reached its tragic conclusion during Shadowland. Working alongside the Hand and other followers of Khonshu, he planned to detonate a dirty bomb in New Orleans, hoping the chaos would convince Khonshu to choose him over Mark. To stop the attack, Moon Knight had no choice but to kill his own brother, ending Randall's twisted obsession once and for all. Psych. Lord Xavier, better known as the Witch King, comes from Earth 13059, a world where magic and monsters replaced advanced technology. Instead of opening Xavier's school and helping mutants live alongside humans, he turned Genosha into a dark kingdom called Ganosha and crowned himself its ruler. His castle became the center of a terrifying empire, and rather than leading the X-Men, he commanded armies of orcs, monstrous creatures, and other horrors that spread fear across the land. Everything about his world feels like a dark fantasy story with castles, sorcery, and endless wars instead of superheroes. Like the original Charles Xavier, the Witch King still has incredibly powerful telepathy, but he also mastered dark magic, making him even more dangerous. His power let him corrupt the minds of people around him, filling them with anger, hatred, and paranoia until they turned against each other. He ruled entirely through fear and cruelty, treating anyone beneath him as nothing more than tools or food. One of the darkest things about him is that he regularly hunted and ate the Crawlers, alternate versions of Nightcrawler that lived in his world. His ultimate goal was complete control over every living thing, and anyone who stood in his way faced torture, sacrifice, or death. The Witch King appeared during Extreme X-Men, when a team of heroes traveled across the multiverse to stop 10 dangerous versions of Charles Xavier before they could threaten reality itself. When they reached Genosha, the battle ended with Captain Alison Blair sacrificing her own life to finally bring the Witch King down. His story didn't end there. His spirit managed to survive in the astral plane, where he later returned alongside a few other evil Xaviers during the Extermination crossover. Their comeback was short-lived, as a massive tear in reality consumed them before they could unleash more chaos, finally bringing the Witch King's reign to an end for good. The Hulk from Old Man Logan. In the dystopian wasteland of Old Man Logan by Mark Millar and Steve McNiven, the Hulk is no longer a hero, or even a man. He's become a grotesque, tyrannical monster, twisted by isolation, radiation, and madness into a force of absolute terror. And this version of Bruce Banner is one of the most disturbing depictions of the Hulk ever created. So in this universe, decades after the villains banded together and wiped out Earth's superheroes in a coordinated massacre, the United States has been carved up into territories ruled by supervillain warlords. One of the most feared is the Hulk Gang, a brutal clan of gamma-powered, inbred monsters descended from Bruce Banner himself, and ruling over them from what used to be California is Hulk, a senile, savage, and cannibalistic patriarch now utterly corrupted. Unlike the classic Hulk, who struggles with morality and control, this Hulk embraced his darker impulses. He grew bitter in the post-hero world, resentful of humanity, and chose isolation and domination over redemption. With no heroes left to hold him accountable, Banner became a backwoods tyrant. Even worse, he fathered his entire gang with his cousin Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, resulting in a clan of incestuous, redneck Hulks who terrorize anyone crossing their path. This Hulk is insanely strong, even by Hulk standards, strong enough to eat people whole and survive being ripped open. He's completely unhinged, having long since lost his moral compass and sanity, and he is driven by dominance, demanding tribute from the people in his territory and ruling through fear and brutality. And when Logan, now a pacifist farmer, fails to pay rent to the Hulk gang, they slaughter his wife and children, and this forces Logan to break his vow of non-violence and embark on a vengeful road trip across America. Eventually, he confronts Hulk himself. After Logan kills most of the gang, Hulk eats him alive, but Logan survives, bursts out of Hulk's stomach in one of the most iconic and savage scenes in modern Marvel comics, and finally ends the monster's reign once and for all. This Hulk is not possessed, mind-controlled, or corrupted by some external force. He simply gave in. He let go of his humanity, gave up on the world, and became the very thing he once fought against. Iron Man 2020. Real name Arno Stark, is one of the most morally complex and authoritarian versions of Iron Man in Marvel's multiverse. Arno Stark was originally portrayed as a future descendant of Tony Stark, but in modern continuity, especially in the Iron Man 2020 event, he's reimagined as Tony's long-lost brother, born a genius, raised in secret, and ultimately corrupted by a dangerous blend of paranoia, entitlement, and utopian obsession. Arno was genetically engineered by Howard and Maria Stark to be the perfect son, meant to inherit the Stark legacy. However, he was born with a terminal illness that confined him to life support. For years, Tony never knew of his existence, and when they eventually met, Arno was brilliant, charming, and convinced he could reshape the world better than Tony ever had. And after Tony's apparent death, or digital reconstruction depending on the arc, Arno assumes the mantle of Iron Man, not as a hero, but as a techno-messianic authoritarian. With glowing gear-shaped pauldrons and a more aggressive, industrial Iron Man suit, he launches an initiative to impose peace by controlling AI through the Extinction Entity protocols, convinced that an incoming threat from a machine-based cosmic force must be preemptively neutralized. He becomes the face of robot oppression, suppressing AI rights and attempting to force all synthetic life under human control. In Iron Man 2020, Arno clashes with an entire rebellion of sentient robots and AI beings, led by Machine Man X-51 and eventually Tony himself, who returns in a new digital form. Arno believes he's saving the world, but in truth, he's being driven by delusion. His visions of the Extinction Entity turn out to be hallucinations created by his deteriorating condition. His crusade for control was never about protection, it was about fear. Arno Stark as Iron Man 2020 represents the dark side of futurism, a belief that progress requires domination, the fear of obsolescence, that he must outdo Tony or be forgotten, and the illusion of control, that the world can be fixed with enough tech and force. He's not a villain, he's more of a tragic mirror to Tony Stark. Where Tony's arc has always been about overcoming his flaws, Arno never gets the chance. He tries to build a perfect world and loses himself to the machinery he thought he could master. The Beast Daredevil. During the Shadowlands storyline, Daredevil reached one of the darkest points of his entire career. After years of battling inner demons like Catholic guilt, trauma, and endless violence, Matt Murdock decided to embrace literal ones. When he took control of the Hand, he built a massive fortress in the middle of Hell's Kitchen and declared himself judge, jury, and executioner. The idea was to use the Hand for good, to bring justice where the system failed, but slowly that power began to twist him, until he became something far more sinister than the devil of Hell's Kitchen. He became the Beast. At first, the transformation wasn't physical, it started with his decisions. Daredevil started ordering assassinations, using fear as law, and cutting ties with his friends who questioned him. But when Bullseye broke into Shadowland to challenge him, Matt showed just how far gone he really was. Wearing a new black costume, he commanded ninjas to attack, and when Bullseye cut them down, Daredevil fought him himself. The fight wasn't about justice anymore, it was personal. Matt brutally shattered Bullseye's arms, and then, in cold blood, drove a sigh through his chest, the same way Bullseye had once killed Electro etc. That act of murder opened the door fully for the demonic entity known as the Beast of the Hand to take over his soul. The Beast is a dark god worshipped by the Hand, a creature that feeds on corruption and blood. Possessing Daredevil turned him into a vessel of pure, supernatural rage. His senses sharpened beyond mortal limits, his range amplified, and his aura radiated something almost inhuman. Even heroes like Spider-Man, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist could feel that Matt wasn't the same man anymore. His voice, his movements, even his presence screamed demon. The other heroes tried to save him rather than destroy him, knowing that deep down, Matt was still fighting. The final confrontation came when Iron Fist channeled his Shy directly into Daredevil's soul, purging the influence of the Beast in a burst of spiritual energy. That Shy punch didn't just heal Matt's body, it burned away the demonic infection and freed what little humanity he had left. In the aftermath, the Shadowland fortress fell and Daredevil disappeared, ashamed and broken, leaving New York in search of redemption. Daredevil's time as the Beast wasn't about power or revenge, it was about losing himself to the very evil he swore to fight. Goblin Queen. Also known as Madeline Pryor, she is a woman born as a copy, manipulated into villainy, created from the genetic material of Jean Grey, and then becomes the Goblin Queen, a dark sorceress who unleashes hell literally on Earth. Madeline was introduced in Uncanny X-Men 168 back in 1983. At first, she seemed to be an ordinary human woman who fell in love with Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, shortly after Jean Grey's apparent death. They married and had a child, Nathan Summers, who would grow up to become Cable. But what neither of them knew was that Madeline wasn't just a lookalike. She was a clone of Jean, created by Mr. Sinister as part of a twisted plan to breed a powerful mutant heir. And when Jean Grey returned from the dead, Cyclops abandoned Madeline and their son, triggering her spiral into despair and rage. Feeling rejected, irrelevant, and robbed of her identity, Madeline became vulnerable to dark forces, specifically the demon Nastor, who offered her the power to take revenge on the world that had discarded her. She accepted, transforming into the Goblin Queen with vast magical abilities and a deep connection to Limbo, a hellish dimension ruled by demonic forces. As the Goblin Queen, Madeline launched the infamous Inferno event, in which she unleashed demonic hordes onto New York City, causing reality to wrap, buildings to come alive, and civilians to turn into monsters, sought to sacrifice her own son, believing it would give her ultimate power and allow her to sever her ties to Jean Grey permanently, and battle the X-Men and X-Factor. Though she ultimately died in Inferno, Madeline's story didn't end there. She was resurrected multiple times, often returning as a vengeful and unstable force, still wrestling with the fact that she was created, not born, and that her existence has always been defined by someone else's shadow. The Goblin Queen wields a combination of powerful sorcery, enhanced by demonic pacts, psionic abilities, inherited from her origin as Jean Grey clone, and manipulation and seduction, often turning others to her side, especially in the demon realm. Unlike many evil versions of heroes, she didn't choose the darkness right away. It found her, exploited her pain, and transformed her into something terrifying. In more recent stories like Hell Lions and Dark Web, Marvel has revisited Madeline with more nuance, presenting her not just as a villain, but as a broken, tragic anti-hero, still trying to find her place in a world that was never meant to include her. Claw. While the Hulk is already the embodiment of anger, this is what happens when even that rage gets its own monster. He is often called the Hulk's Hulk. Unlike the Hulk, who deep down still fights for good, this version is pure sadistic destruction given form. His appearance alone sets him apart. Pitch black skin, glowing red cracks all over his body, like molten scars, jagged with white hair, burning red eyes, and sharp claws instead of hands. If the Hulk is anger unleashed, this version is hate personified. He was created during the Access storyline when a massive magical inversion spell swapped the moralities of heroes and villains. The spell reached deep into Bruce Banner's psyche, awakening the one being even the Hulk himself tried to repress. He clawed his way back to the surface, laughing as he did, mocking both Banner and the Hulk for their weakness. Unlike the other Hulk personas like the Devil Hulk or Guilt Hulk, who at least had some purpose or twisted logic, this version had none. He existed purely to kill. The moment he appeared, he single-handedly tore through the inverted Avengers, shrugging off their attacks like nothing. He didn't fight for control or survival, he fought because he loved the chaos. What made him frightening wasn't just his range, though he was strong enough to toss around heroes like toys, it was how much he enjoyed suffering. He taunted his enemies while crushing them, laughing as he talked about bathing in the blood of the innocent. At one point he even tried to eat Nova's arm, completely unfazed that Nova was still a teenager. Cannibalistic, psychotic, and utterly unhinged, he was the kind of monster that made even other monsters nervous. Even the inverted villains wanted nothing to do with him, recognizing that Claw wasn't just another rampaging brute. Power-wise, he retained all of Hulk's usual abilities, superhuman strength, near immortality, regeneration, and resilience, but his claws made him even deadlier. They weren't just for show. He could slice through steel or bone with terrifying precision, his healing factor made him unstoppable, and his mind was too far gone for reason or empathy. Eventually, it took the combined effort of some of the most powerful beings alive to stop him, including the White Skull, an inverted Red Skull, Doctor Doom, Scarlet Witch, Brother Voodoo, and Captain America. Only after an immense magical reversal was Claw finally exorcised, and Bruce Banner returned to normal. Iron Inquisitor. On Earth 4111, Howard Stark was the founder of Stark Industries, a man responsible for unimaginable technological progress and the original architect of S.H.I.E.L.D., helping to save the world countless times. But despite everything he had accomplished, Howard couldn't bear the fact that the true age of heroes, the future he envisioned, would arrive after his time. His legacy would live on, yes, but he wouldn't be there to witness it. So like many brilliant men in Marvel's darker corners, Howard made a choice. He struck a deal with Mephisto, and the price was his own son, sacrificing his own blood in exchange for immortality. He would live long enough to witness the heroic age, but in doing so, he forfeited his company, his fortune, and his humanity. From that moment forward, Howard became the Iron Inquisitor, a damned soul in iron armor, enslaved to the Council of Red, a multiversal alliance of Mephistos who manipulate timelines and realities. Howard, now stripped of his name and purpose, served them as their armorer, creating weaponry and armor in the depths of Mephisto's realm. As Iron Inquisitor, Howard was eventually assigned to Earth 616 Mephisto, aiding him in the effort to destroy this universe's Tony Stark. But when that Mephisto was destroyed by Moon Knight, the Devil returned and Howard continued to serve him. Together, they began amassing power through soul collection and dark sorcery, claiming debts from those who had made deals with Mephisto by devouring their bodies and souls. Howard's power as the Iron Inquisitor is deeply tied to both magic and technology. His Mephisto-forged armor grants him immortality and is equipped with advanced weaponry capable of tracking targets through the time stream, including homing missiles designed for cross-temporal warfare. So basically, the Iron Inquisitor is Howard Stark twisted by ego and envy, a man who sacrificed everything for immortality and legacy and lost both. And instead of shaping the future, he became a weapon. He doesn't fight for redemption, he doesn't seek absolution, he serves hell because he chose to. The Necromancer. A twisted version of Doctor Strange, a version of him who abandoned the path of enlightenment and fully embraced the temptations of death and power. Hailing from Counter-Earth, this Strange began his story much like the one we know, a brilliant but arrogant surgeon whose life shattered after a tragic accident. But whereout Doctor Strange found humility and balance under the Ancient One, this Strange shows vengeance. When Baron Mordo killed his world's Ancient One, the Counter-Earth Strange didn't seek justice. He killed Mordo in cold blood, sealing his fate as a sorcerer corrupted by wrath. From that moment on, he stopped being a protector of reality and became something far worse, the Necromancer. Unlike his Earth 616 counterpart, who wielded the mystic arts to defend the world from darkness, the Necromancer used them to dominate it. His powers grew rapidly as he studied the forbidden arts, focusing on resurrection, manipulation of souls, and death magic. He sought the Book of the Vishanti, not to protect reality, but to conquer it, hoping to merge Counter-Earth and Earth 616 into one realm under his control. However, his ambition drew the attention of Eternity. Eternity punished him by trapping his essence within its cosmic frame, forcing the Necromancer to witness helplessly the eventual destruction of his entire world. When Eternity later fell into a coma during one of Marvel's cosmic crises, the Necromancer saw his chance. He secretly transferred his essence into Gamora, using her body as a vessel to escape Eternity's dimension. Once free, he carved out his own empire in Shazana's dimension, defeating its rulers and enslaving entire legions of demons. By the time he returned to Earth 616, he wasn't just a corrupted sorcerer, he was practically a dark god, fueled by centuries of hatred and fragments of Eternity's power itself. He infiltrated the Sanctum Sanctorum and tried to claim the Book of the Vishanti again, but the book rejected him. Without the true aura of Doctor Strange, the pure spirit of the Sorcerer Supreme, the Necromancer couldn't control its light, so he turned instead to darker alliances, joining forces with Magus. When the real Doctor Strange returned with Agatha Harkness, Scarlet Witch, and other mystics, they found the Sanctum crawling with demons. The Necromancer had unleashed a small army, threatening Wong and others with the sword of the ultimate shadow. Even with the combined power of Marvel's greatest mages, he held his ground, wielding the vapors of Vulture and other high-level spells with terrifying precision. In their final duel, Doctor Strange realized the truth. The Necromancer had absorbed fragments of Eternity's essence, making him almost godlike. So Strange didn't overpower him, he outsmarted him, turning his own spells back against him in a psychic battle so fierce that it caused the Necromancer to implode, consumed by his own corrupted energy. He remains one of the most haunting reflections of Stephen Strange's soul, what happens when knowledge replaces wisdom, when a savior becomes obsessed with control. If Doctor Strange represents the balance between life and death, the necromancer is what happens when the scales tip too far. A sorcerer who looked into the abyss and decided to stay there. Poison. His story begins much like the Earth 616 Peter's The Other storyline, where he is cocooned under the Brooklyn Bridge and offered rebirth by the embodiment of his spider powers. But instead of accepting that new life, this Peter rejects his inner spider and kills it, tearing off its head. In doing so, he severs his connection to the life force that could have renewed him, leaving his body incomplete, half-dead, a hollow vessel waiting to be filled. The opening is exactly what the Venom symbiote feels. It abandons its host, McGargan, and slithers back to Peter's cocoon, merging with him while he's still trapped between life and death. For months, Peter's fading consciousness battles the alien in his mind, but the struggle drags on until the symbiote finally wins. The human part of Peter Parker dies, and something new takes his place. The creature that emerges isn't Spider-Man or Venom, it's something worse, something entirely alien. It calls itself Poison because, unlike Venom, it doesn't just bond, it consumes. His first act is to visit Aunt May and Mary Jane, assuring them in a disturbingly calm voice that everything will be okay. He believes he's been reborn through love, that his new power is a gift he should share, but his version of love is wrapped and parasitic. He offers to bond Mary Jane to a symbiote spawn so they can be together forever. When she recalls and calls him Venom, he corrects her coldly, saying Venom was weak, that he is evolution. When Wolverine and Luke Cage intervene, he defeats them effortlessly, even stabbing Cage with a toxin-filled stinger that bypasses his invulnerable skin. Poison isn't raging like a monster. He is eerily composed, speaking like a preacher while performing acts of horror. Mary Jane manages to manipulate his fractured mind, buying time by pretending to agree to bond with his symbiote offspring. For a brief moment, Peter's old self flickers inside, and Poison hesitates, but his humanity is long gone. After leaving her alive, he digs up Gwen Stacy's corpse and resurrects her with a symbiote of her own, turning her into a carnage-like creature. So Poison isn't just another evil variant, he is what happens when Peter's compassion and guilt rush into obsession and control. It's a perfect inversion of the Spider-Man mythos. The hero who once swore to protect others becomes the disease that devours them.